I'm making my own way, but I stumble and I falter every day. But I love my baby now. But I love my baby, I'm still learning how. Hey, 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 I'm okay. Stay with me. We'll beat these
Good evening, and welcome to the May 5th Pathways to Parenting Success television show. Tonight's topic is how to thrive as a caregiver of an older, challenged adult. So this evening, we have four panelists with us. First, we have Mickey Fire, who is a clinical psychologist specializing in issues related to life transitions, grief and loss, trauma, and relationships. Mickey works with individual adults, adolescents, and couples in private practice in her Boulder-based office, as well as over Skype. Having worked in hospice and other agencies specializing in therapy for older adults, Mickey has seen many challenges that caregivers must cope with on a day-to-day basis. Next, we have Tim Ansbach. Tim is a master's level psychotherapist with 11 plus years of experience in the mental health field. He has worked the past 7 years with Windhorse Community Services in Boulder, which serves individuals and families recovering from mental health challenges at home and in the community. Tim has also worked extensively with children, adolescents, young adults, and their families in crisis through a variety of organizations in Pennsylvania and Colorado as a therapeutic mentor and psychotherapist. Tim's private practice is focused on providing therapeutic support to individuals, couples, and families. Next, we have Ellen Knapp. After earning her master's in contemplative psychotherapy from Naropa, Ellen taught art to children for 5 years. Although Ellen's current professional focus is working with older clients, since becoming a psychotherapist in 1990, she has worked with adults of all ages in several different settings. Until 1996, Ellen worked with the Boulder County Mental Health Partners on the emergency psychiatric team, the child and adolescent team at the Alcohol Recovery Center, and in 1996 transitioned to working with elder care services. From 1996 until 2007, she owned and operated a licensed assisted living home in Denver, and since 2007 has worked with Windhorse Community Services and Windhorse Family and Elder Care. Emily Cooper is with Boulder County Area Agency on Aging, a division of Boulder County Community Services, and has been with them since 1999. As the Information and Assistance Specialist for Caregiver Programs, Emily helps family caregivers of older adults learn about local resources, talks with them about self-care issues, and coordinates a variety of programs for their education and support. Emily has extensive personal experience as a caregiver, as well as having cared for her parents, mother-in-law, and spouse. Welcome, everybody. I'll be your moderator this evening. I am Leisha Connors-Bauer. I'm with Boulder County Community Services. I also, before we get started, wanted to thank our partners in this evening's show, which is Boulder Valley School District and Channel 22. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to bring you this show this evening. So since the show is titled How to Thrive as a Caregiver of an Older Challenged Adult, one of the things that I wanted to do is maybe provide some additional information that helps set the context for that. I was looking at this study from the Pew Research Internet Project that said that 4 in 10 adults in the United States are caring for an adult or child with significant health issues, which is up from 30% in 2010. And that caring for a loved one is an activity that cuts across most demographic groups, but is especially prevalent among adults ages 30 to 64, a group that's traditionally in the workforce. So to me, I think we'll talk a little bit about how do you balance all of those things. 47% of U.S. adults say it is likely that at some point in their life they will be responsible for caring for an aging parent or an elderly family member. And fully 7.3% of U.S. adults aged 65 and older are living with a chronic condition such as high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease, and that the day-to-day management of these complex medical cases falls squarely on family members and friends who may not be trained in helping to address those medical issues. So since we're talking about thriving as a caregiver, I just wanted to know from each of you What does that mean to you to thrive as a caregiver of an older or a challenged adult? And Emily, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Thanks, Alicia. I think thriving as a caregiver, and I'd actually say, instead of using the word thrive, I'd say doing your best in a really difficult situation means to maximize inner and outer resources. So much of what we experience in life is about what's going on in our heads, and that's the same with caregiving too. And I think first, if a caregiver can really accept their situation and fully commit to it and not waste a lot of energy wishing for something else or fighting against what is, that is a good start. And then realizing that their care recipient is on a journey of illness and perhaps death. And this is the care recipient's journey, not the caregiver's. And that can relieve the caregiver of too much responsibility for what's going on with their care recipient. They can't control whether they're happy or not, or what the outcome will be, or whether they're going to be in pain. And then third, I think it helps the caregiver to find some meaning in caregiving, to put it in a larger context, see it in a bigger picture, whether it's a spiritual meaning or just the value of sticking by somebody. And then to believe in their own value and truly be committed to taking care of themselves while they're in caregiving. And then the outer resources is using all of the informal and formal supports that are available out there. So I know we're going to talk more about those.
Okay, great. Ellen?
That was great.
Thank you.
I've been thinking about, from the point of view of self-care, most family caregivers are unpaid caregivers, and so it is a matter of, I think one of the primary keys is to educate oneself about the situation that you're involved in, say if it's Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or whatever it is, to actually inform yourself and really educate yourself so that you feel well prepared, and also to make use of the resources in your own world, so sort of a team approach. It's very helpful to have other people so that one person doesn't end up doing everything or feel that they're sort of burdened by everything. And often I think families don't realize that they can extend out and include even neighbors, but volunteers, pastor from the community, and just to continue, maybe they need some home health, help at home. But that's a real strategy, I think, is to work as a team. Another key is to really plan ahead. For example, I like the example of maybe an elderly parent who really shouldn't be driving anymore. Rather than waiting till the last minute when it's really too late, and you have sort of a crisis on your hands, to take these situations early on and really think about them and begin to prepare with the whole family and the person that you're working with, so they can participate and feel that you're really well prepared before something gets really serious. And then I think the final thing for me would be about personal boundaries, i.e. sort of psychological markers where you decide how much you can do and when it's just too much, in order to be able to continue to stay fresh and be able to give what you have. And so again, it's back to the first point of using your personal resources as well as maybe eventually employing and using professional resources.
Great. Tim?
Well, I'm coming from the perspective of, at Windhorse, we work with people with mental health challenges, so working with people with schizophrenia and bipolar, and we have a team approach there, so we're all working together as a group. And there's nothing really else I feel like I can say. That you guys summed it up really good. But the one thing I'd want to add is just how important it is, I think, to, like, the situation that you're dealing with, like, it's heartbreaking, like when you're working with people that are suffering from some of the things that they're suffering from. And we all want to change it and make it better for them. And I think we always have the person that we're caring for, their best interests in mind. But it can become really easy to just focus on them all the time and lose track of ourselves and the rest of our family members. So I would add, just really taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're mentally and emotionally and spiritually well while we're doing that work, because it can be really draining.
Okay. Mickey?
I agree. This has this has summed up a lot. So, and I really resonate with everything that has already been said. I think, as I think about this idea, it also was striking to me, the title, Thriving as a Caregiver, and I thought, wow, that is almost an oxymoron. I haven't heard any caregiver really be anywhere close to, I think, what they would be describing as really thriving. And I wish there was a term in between surviving and thriving, because so many caregivers, I mean, that's the term that I hear is, I barely feel like I'm surviving. So I put that out there because I think actually part of thriving, and I think this is following your kind of first point, Emily, is just to, in some ways, accept where one is at, and to even lower the expectation, because there is such a heavy expectation, I think, that often caregivers put on themselves to do everything and to do it right, and to even almost try to change whatever it is that they're really faced with in terms of that journey that the person who they're actually, who they're actually caring for is going through. So I would simply add to what that experience is of doing as well as you can, of thriving, that I think accepting wherever you really are and recognizing that whatever the experiences are, which can often be just, barely feeling like you might be able to get out of bed, let alone help this other person get out of bed, that all of that is really normal and it's okay. And I just also really want to follow, I think, Tim's point that I think that a huge piece of the experience of thriving versus just surviving is, in whatever way it is, to recognize that your own ability to take care of this other person or these other people is going to be very dependent on how well resourced you feel you are. So whatever it's going to take to take care of one's own self, so that you don't feel so depleted, I think is a part of it. And I think balance is a huge piece, which I think was also said.
One of the things that I heard a couple times in some of the comments is this idea of having a team approach, whether it's looking up other resources in the community or in some way building a team and acknowledging that you really can't do it on your own, because then because if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're not going to be as effective as a caregiver, so you may need help. What might be some suggestions you would have for somebody to sort of build a team around them so that they can move from that surviving to thriving in terms of caregiving? Tim.
Go.
Go.
I don't, like, when, again, coming from the perspective of working with people with mental health challenges, I can't imagine doing that work on my own. Because it's just so immensely painful and hard. So families, I think, they need to support each other. And I think I said it can be really easy to just focus on the person who's ill or who's not doing well, but you lose track of each other. So normally when families are dealing with a family member who is having a hard time, it can be really easy to label them as the problem and focus all the energy on that person. And so I think it's really important to resource out to each other, to also focus on your relationships with one another, not just the person who's not doing well. And sometimes, like with mental illness, it has quite a stigma to it, so families will keep it a secret often and have that struggle just within their little group, and not get the support that is out there with other families that are having the same struggles. And I think it's really important to relate to and to support other families who are also in the same boat.
Okay. Emily.
Yes, I think it's important to remember that that we all need to learn how to give, how to care for another person. I think so often family caregivers think they'd be laying a burden on someone else if they asked them to help with the care. Years ago, I wrote an article for our newsletter, Care Connections, called something about the gift of giving, that it's important for all of us to learn how to take care of each other. And that's something a caregiver can share with other family members or friends or others in the community, the gift of allowing them to give back. There's a wonderful website called sharethecare.org that provides a model for collecting or putting together a team of caregivers, and it encourages the primary caregiver to think about everybody out there who could pitch in to help, from friends, neighbors, family members, coworkers, faith community members, and so on. And then it shows you how to set up a system for them to sign up for different jobs. But it's something we all need to learn to do.
Okay. Ellen, would you like to add anything?
It makes me think about how, as I think Mickey was pointing out there, the upside of caregiving, the sort of rewarding part is that it is a tremendously rewarding skill and position to be in. And so I think it's, it can be very intimate, and in a way it can be some of the best times you can have in that period of life with a person. So just to remember that it's not all drudgery and overwork, and it is those things sometimes, but it's also very important and rewarding, and I think Tim mentioned the word spiritually uplifting, but again, in order to be able to feel that way, it's important to, as we've been saying, have the support of other people. But it is, I think we all feel that because we all do that. That's what we're all in the occupation of doing, is helping, and it is very rewarding. So, just
Okay.
to make that point.
Mickey, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think the only piece that I would add is that, two pieces. The first is, I think, just culturally speaking, there is, I think, an idea among, not everybody, but I think there's a stronger idea in the culture, in the kind of the predominant culture in the United States, that when you are a caregiver, particularly of a family member, someone you're close to, that you're supposed to do it by yourself. And so I think there's just a strong stigma against asking for help. So I just want to point that piece out, that echoing everything that's been said, that oftentimes people really do want to know other people, how can I help? The only other piece I would add is how important it is to not only ask for help in regards to the caregiving tasks, but what it means to also ask for help for oneself, which might mean, recognizing that it's, that you might need some help making meals at home, or cleaning your own house, or getting a massage, or finding a support group, or whatever it might be.
I think that's a really good segue into the next question I was going to ask you, which is if each of you could identify one recommendation that you would make for how caregivers can maintain balance in their own lives while they're doing the work of caregiving. I'll go ahead and start with you, Mickey, since you were sort of in that vein.
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind is actually something that Ellen and I had an opportunity to give a presentation on, how to, being an exhausted caregiver is, I think, what the title of it was. And we presented with another woman who I thought offered a really, really wonderful way of thinking about self-care. So this is not just one thing, but this has really stuck with me. And what she said is that something like that we often have an idea of, a list of things that we would put down as, these are the things I can do for self-care. I can go for a walk, and I can play with my dog, and I can, all of these different pieces. And she said, it's not really self-care if it's not really what you need in that moment to take care of yourself. So her suggestion, which is what I will offer, is in any given moment to really, really check in and to just ask yourself, in this moment right now, what is it that I really need? And it might be going for a walk, it might be exercising, all those things on the list, and it might be, I actually really need to turn on the TV for 5 minutes and just completely check out, or whatever it might be.
Okay. Tim?
I like that. We should invite her to the next talk. I can't help but think about the work that I do on the teams with people who are having a hard time, and it's so easy for me to get really stressed and to not be at my best, and I'm not even aware of it. And it might take, someone pointing it out to me or I don't know what, but so it's important, I think, to really check in with yourself and acknowledge your state of mind at the time and how you're feeling, because it's easy for us to override ourselves and just keep pushing. And that's why it's good to have other members and other family support, because you can support each other in supporting your loved one. But yeah, I like what you said, Mickey, of just, because I definitely have my list of things to do to care for myself, but I think whatever is called for in the moment, but making sure that you do take the time to give yourself that, because it's really easy to push that stuff aside. Too many people push that stuff aside and don't give themselves the opportunity to check in, to breathe, and to give themselves the space that they need.
Okay. Ellen?
I think different things work for different people. So sometimes I've suggested to people that they journal, just to write down, just to kind of be able to empty and get their kind of needs and intensity on paper, and that doesn't work for everybody. So then I would say, what about just talking? Just a simple conversation with somebody, just to have some kind of connection and way of getting, not being so isolated with the situation. And then, as Mickey was saying, I was just reading today about the 5-minute rule. It could just be 5 minutes of going outside. Just 5 minutes can help if things are that intense or you're that lonely or overwhelmed. Just 5 minutes, a little break can do it, and then hopefully your own ideas will come to you.
Okay. Emily?
Lots of things, but to me the most important thing is to let go of some control and to lower your expectations and be okay with imperfection. That there are no perfect answers in caregiving or when a loved one is suffering or dying, and that's okay. You don't have to be able to figure things out perfectly or find the exactly right place for them to live or the perfect in-home provider or any of it. There's no such thing. So be okay with imperfection and don't blame yourself for it. But I love the idea of just those momentary breaks. And just the other day I was outside on a beautiful day and taking a walk, but I wasn't there at all. And I stopped for just a moment, got myself there in the moment, and just felt the breeze on my face and looked out at the geese on the water and the sun shining and the mountains. And it was the most perfect 1-minute break that I'd had in weeks. So something like that can be very valuable.
And I think one of the things that I heard in what you were saying, what all of you were saying, is also to do the part that works for you. The other people can have different lists that work for them, but what works for them doesn't necessarily work for you. Because I think about in terms of caregiving, I also think of in terms of long-distance caregiving, which I don't think we're really going to have a lot of time to talk about. But so many families in Boulder who have older parents who live in another state, and how do you manage that particular piece? Even if you're not there, there's an element that connects you to what's going on with that particular, with the family. But taking that moment to be, I think, conscious about what's going on, and conscious, and maybe making that connection, even if it's not necessarily a physical connection, might be something that could work for some people, might be something different that works for somebody else. But it sounds like it's really important to know what it is that really works for you in that particular moment. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what are some of the resources that might be available to people who are caregivers. And if you could just think about things that somebody might not necessarily think of that would be a good resource for them. And then I want to close with Emily, so I'll ask you which one of you would like to go first this time. But just think about something that you think could be a resource for somebody who's a caregiver, who could provide them with that support to help them move from that journey from surviving to thriving as a caregiver. Something that you know of that might be a good resource. So who would like to go first? Ellen.
Well, I keep thinking about myself because that's what I'm currently doing, is offering care management. And so I'm the kind of work that I do is a possibility, and it's rather unknown, that there are people who are working just to help a family or a person gather resources. And I would definitely turn to Emily also at the Area Agency on Aging. Those are most cities, I think, have one, an Area Agency on Aging, and people don't know about those. They're amazing centers for information and activities and things that can be offered. So I think I would probably start there. Council on Aging, some of them are called Council on Aging. I know when my mother was older, she went to a Council on Aging. It's not that well known, but there's tremendous help there.
Okay. And I know, Tim, within the context that you work, it's a little different than caring for an elderly parent or someone with a chronic health issue. So what resource would you recommend for somebody who is caregiving for a family member with mental health issues?
We partner a lot with mental health partners here in Boulder, so they're a more community resource here in Boulder, so I would recommend the mental health partners. But working at Windhorse, we have a lot. We're lucky that we have a lot of resources, and we're there. So I don't often refer out, but mental health partners is who I work with most of the time. But also, I think excellent resource is just a friend. A friend can be the best resource sometimes.
Okay. Mickey?
Yeah, I think there's so many resources, and I'm just trying to think what could be the most useful. I mean, I think being a therapist myself, one of the first things that comes to mind is just the resource of any type of healing, whether it is working with a therapist, working with a body worker, anything where you actually schedule the time and maybe have to go somewhere and you're accountable to that space. And I say that because it's not even so important what happens in that space, but I think one of the challenges for caregivers is just even feeling like they have permission to carve out the time. So if you have something that happens, let's say every week or even just every other week, once a month, that is a 30-minute or 1 hour time period that you can just go to and be held in that space, that can be really useful.
Okay. And so, Emily, I know that Ellen mentioned the Area Agency on Aging and what great resources are available. So could you talk a little bit about some of the resources that are available here locally through the Area Agency on Aging for caregivers?
Sure. Well, first of all, I do provide information and assistance to family caregivers. So a caregiver is welcome to call me to get information about local resources or just to talk about their caregiving situation. We've got a big event coming up called the Caregiving Symposium. It's our annual educational event for family caregivers, also open to the general public. It's on Thursday, May 22nd from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Plaza in Longmont. And it features a large resource fair, service providers, 12 different workshops on caregiving topics, lunch, lots of great educational materials, lots of staff to talk to, and it's free. And we also offer on-site respite care for that. We know that caregivers have a hard time getting adequate training and often are thrust into caregiving, not knowing what they're supposed to be doing. So we offer 2 different courses for caregivers. One is about self-care, which we've been talking about tonight, and the other is taught by a nurse and is about learning hands-on practical skills. And those are each offered 4 times a year, and they're also free. So those are great resources for caregivers. We sponsor a caregiver support group that meets in Boulder each month, and there are numerous other groups available that I can provide information about. And we also offer respite services, 2 different programs that enable family caregivers to take respite or a break. One is a financial program that provides reimbursement for the cost of hiring a substitute caregiver, and the other one is a volunteer program that matches volunteers with an older adult for friendly visits each week so the caregiver can get out. So those are some of the highlights of what we do.
Great, thank you. I have to say this went really quick. I think we could have talked about caregiving much longer than the time we had tonight. So as we wrap up, I'd like to remind you of some upcoming Pathways to Parenting Success events that are coming up. On May 12th, Giftedness and Stress at the Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Library. This is about why it is so common for gifted students to struggle with stress and how to help them manage it. It is from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And then on May 20th at the Louisville Library from 6:30 to 8 p.m. is Life Transitions, how to successfully cope with loss, to help yourself and or those you love to successfully move through the grief process and heal, featuring 2 of our panelists this evening, Mickey and Ellen. I would be remiss if I did not thank, again, our partners, the Boulder Valley School District and Channel 22, and our sponsors for the Pathways to Parenting Success series. This includes Boulder County Healthy Youth Alliance, the Daily Camera, Centennial Peaks Hospital, the Parent Engagement Network, the Hope Coalition, Temple Grandin School, and the Boulder Counseling Cooperative. And I would like to thank you for tuning in this evening. And again, thank you to my panelists, Mickey Fry, Tim Anspach, Ellen Knapp, and Emily Cooper. Thank you and have a good evening.
And now the planet's started bowing down. And soon the growth returns to follow ground. But I know what's churning underneath the snow. And I love my baby and we've miles to go. Hey, 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 I'm okay. Be with me. We'll beat this, can't you see? So wait a while, winter time.